I'd like to call to order the Pentucket Regional School Committee Business Meeting of March 1st, 2022. Roll call, Wayne Adams.
Here.
Joanna Blanchard is expected but not here yet. Emily Dwyer. Here. Marie Felzani. Here. Dick Hodges.
Here.
Chris Markins.
Here.
Ashley McLaughlin, I believe she is coming. Chris Redding. Here. Dina Trotta, here.
Marianne moved you over there, Greg.
Yeah, Greg, you're right here.
Oh.
Just because Joanna, you get to be at the head table tonight.
You're the star.
Okay, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Any comments, questions, discussion? All in favor? Subcommittee updates, finance, Wayne?
We signed all the warrants tonight. We're good to go.
Great. Emily, teaching, learning, accountability?
The minutes from our meeting that I gave the update on last time are in the consent agenda that we just passed, and we don't have anything new.
Thank you. Policy?
Policy, we're going to be scheduling, we have to check with Dr. B, but we're looking to schedule sometime on March 10th. When and where is yet to be decided.
Okay,
We'll figure it out. It's the last one, the E policy.
awesome. And strategic plan, any updates? Wayne?
We're going to be meeting March 9th. The survey is out to the stakeholders. We've got approximately 200 who have now, 300 now.
299.
This afternoon, which have responded to that. And when we meet, we'll start collating things.
And just a reminder, it's that is a survey that gets sent out Friday, so that was not an opportune time, but we wanted to get it out before break. And there'll be a reminder with a link for that survey that will go out during this week, because typically Tuesday, Wednesday are prime days to send that out. And because we have the ability to now, it'll go out on, for a lot of the parents that will end up going out on their text message. So they'll email and text, and I also encouraged everyone, who anyone else in the community, to just share that with community members, any stakeholders that might want to fill that out. It's very helpful.
Madam Chair, can I make a correction, please? I had another meeting on the 10th that I was thinking of, the policy meeting to yet to be decided when and where is on the 11th of March, Friday. I apologize.
Great, thanks, Dick. No problem. Okay, we don't have anyone signed up for public comment. So now we have superintendent news and student rep news. Hannah, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
I just have a few quick things, but obviously I think the biggest one is that we don't have to wear masks anymore, so that's pretty exciting. I thought it was going to be weirder walking into school, but it didn't, like, looking at everyone is nice, but I'm still like, oh. So like that's kind of weird, but like, I think like it definitely has made like everyone happier. And there's a lot more like chatter in all the classrooms, so it kind of feels like just a lot happier, I think. And then also like even the kids who still like choose to wear masks, like it's not awkward or anything. Like everyone's respectful, and that's just nice to see too. And then along with the mask rule, we also just decided that for prom in the spring, kids can bring people from other schools. And then we'll have like normal size tables again. So all the good normal things. And then also next week we have our Deca Competition. So that's in Boston. So we're hoping to be able to stay over. And our group this year is about, I think we have 18 or 20-ish kids. And that's definitely the most we've ever had. In the past 4 years that we've done it. So if we're able to stay over, we're all going to be really excited for that. It's a lot of our last year, so we just want to kind of make it the most memorable we can. And then also the student council right now is trying to work on a blood drive. It was supposed to be next week, but I think I don't know why we have to move the date. So we're working on that. And then also I just wanted to mention a few things with sports. Most sports are wrapping up, but I know track's still going on. The boys just had their pentathlon last night, and the girls are tonight. And then also the track girls, some of our track girls are going to nationals, which is very exciting. So I know our 4x2 team, and then Emily Rubio is going to high jump, and then her sister Phoebe is going too. And then the swim team just this past week competed at Boston University, and that went really well for them. And then also we had one of our wrestlers score second place at the state competition. So I just wanted to highlight some of those things. Doing really well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just, so Emily Rubio won the state title on that in
Yeah.
high jump, so that's pretty
Oh, wow.
incredible. We will be recognizing her here, because we don't often have a
Do you remember the height?
I do you know what the height was, Hannah?
5'4".
5'4"?
There you go.
Are you serious?
I think 5.
Yeah, so, but she just both Emily and her sister just exceptional careers, so great job to them. And I think, like, when we talk about the swim team, some people don't know that we have a swim team, but we do. We're in a collaborative with Triton on that swim team. And I know Brian, young Mr. Brian did a great job, and that progress has been incredible as those students have been performing in the pool. So just great job to all the student athletes on that. Madam Chair, from my end, not a lot of news in terms of outside what we're talking about tonight, other than obviously the masks are off. I'm glad to hear Hannah say people feel happier. I think as a whole, it's that return to normalcy, that sense of, okay, we're out of a 2-year window at this point, coming out of it. And of course, I will apologize for that late message on Sunday. That was a Friday evening message that came from the CDC that no longer required masks on transportation. So I did not receive that in any form until I saw that Saturday morning. So Sunday morning is when that message went out to everyone about the buses as well. So just across the board, it looks like we moved in the right direction. And the other part I'll piggyback on that with are the numbers are through the basement in terms of positivity rates in the towns. And we've not had one positive report. It's only Tuesday, but not one positive report so far in the schools. So moving in the right direction, for sure.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now we are on to new, oh no, we're not. I always forget this. Presentation from Merrimack Schools, Principal Ken Kelly. Would like to come up.
So Madam Chair, as you know, and the committee members, each meeting we try to do a recognition to give a different person an opportunity to come up and talk about the work that they're doing. And tonight, I'm happy to welcome Mr. Kelly, the principal of Merrimack Schools, which is the Sweetser and Donahue Schools.
Thanks.
Mr. Kelly, looks like you're up and running.
Thank you, school committee. Thanks for having us. Thanks for hosting Merrimack Schools today. So, the elementary principals talked about ways to sort of share out with the school committee and the community about things that are going on at the schools. And a really good way to do that would be to use our school improvement plans, which you're familiar with from the beginning of the year. So, this is sort of an overview of our 4 school improvement plan goals. There's a literacy goal, a math goal, a communication goal, and then sort of a PBIS goal about student engagement in the schools. So this is sort of our way to show you what's going on over in Merrimack. And then I have sort of a closing story at the end. So I'm hoping the sound works on this.
Make it full screen.
Yeah.
created using Powtoon.
I want to thank April Loverit as our tech specialist over in Merrimack. So we had this ready to go, and then about 1:30 today, it was gone, just like poof, gone from the platform, and April was able to get it back. So some of the transitions are a little quick, so but we had a little technical difficulty there. But so that's just a recap of the 4 goals that we have. They are on track, doing a lot of great work with literacy, with our new wisdom curriculum, the Haggerty Foundation's early literacy foundational work is got a huge amount of traction there. We just had data meetings recently, and our math goal is actually we've almost achieved our math goal for the year, so the teachers and the kids are working really, really hard over in Merrimack. The last thing I just wanted to share is that last year's student council, right as the pandemic was hitting, student council was working to sort of establish a new mascot over in Merrimack, and we settled on Willow the Wolf. And so you saw Willow at the very beginning of that presentation. This is actually Ian Reynolds. Ian's a student over at the high school. We talked with Marcia Nato, the fine arts department chair, about having a student work on a logo for Willow. So in the fall, Ian was able to come up with that rendition of a wolf, and everybody really liked it. So we've adopted that as our new logo. That's Willow the Wolf, and it's really special because that's sort of internal Pentucket to us. It was designed by a student, and it's gaining some traction now branding-wise because that's a new chalkboard display at the Sweetser lobby, where Mrs. Hall, our awesome main office admin assistant, set that up for our readathon. So that's over in the Sweetser lobby. If you want to come over and see it, you can. But so Willow is now gaining traction branding-wise throughout. We're known as the Wolf Pack, and a lot of people are walking around with some gear that they've gotten from our branding website. So. Yeah, all kinds of good things going on in Merrimack, so just wanted to share that out. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Could you explain to me goal 4, because I couldn't really see it.
Sure. Goal 4 is the communication goal. So that's where we just want to make sure we've got so many channels that people can access it where they are, whether they're like on their phone, on the computer. So we're using the new Blackboard communication system. The new website's been a great way for us to get information out. We send out now weekly newsletters via SMORE right through Blackboard. We do all report card communication through the Infinite Campus portal for parents to get that. So we're trying to be able to get information out to parents where they can access it and they're comfortable getting information.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Kelly, could you talk about, you mentioned a readathon. What's going on?
Yeah, sure. That's our PTO's big fundraiser for the year is a readathon now. It's going on. Thank you, Dr. Bartholomew, for doing a read aloud after Dr. Seuss. And so that's what that billboard is right there, is promoting our readathon. It's gotten a great start. We've had a huge response to it. And that's a great connection to, we talked about different fundraisers, and we had done the booster-thon in the past, and this was much more a connection to the work we do at the school with literacy and having students read. So this is something that we're on board with, and the students and teachers have really embraced it, and a lot of people in the community, thank you, have done some read-alouds that kids are looking at in school, and the drive's off to a great start.
You saw Dr. Seuss.
It was awesome. Mr. Manny, the selectman from Merrimack, actually, I think his was today. Trying something along today. I read Little Blue Truck, can't go wrong.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Mr. Kelly, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So as he wraps up, I'm just going to make mention, Madam Chair, that Mr. Kelly mentioned something that we've heard all the elementary principals say, and that's about they just have their data meetings. Again, I'm just going to go back and just talk about how that is something that's grown and developed over the last couple of years. When we first came here, we instituted these are the types of assessments that need to be done so we can all evaluate student progress in a way that makes sense, as opposed to different schools and different grades and different approaches. And with the assistance of iReady and NWFs and Nibbles, we've been able to have those data meetings. And again, Ms. Hogan spoke to all of us. She's the elementary coordinator, curriculum coordinator. And she's an integral part of those meetings. They sit down, Mr. Conway, Ms. Hogan meets with each grade level, principal, assistant principal, meet with the grade level, and they all look at this data together and talk about, okay, based on this data, what's the best way to move forward? It's not how do we move forward as a grade, it's how do we move forward looking at individual students, like what students might need some support, what are some approaches we're going to take with those students. And these are conversations that are so essential to building that foundational learning for the children. And it's just really thankful that that's in your school improvement plan. It's something that you mentioned here, because I don't think it's mentioned enough, because our job, our focus, I know you mentioned number 2, pillar number 2 is communication, pillar number 1 is students first always. And that's what we're here to do every single night and every single day, is to put students first always. And that type of work is really important. So, Ms. Kelly, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, next is new business, and the first item is high school overnight field trip.
It's the trip to Deca, it's for the Deca students to go to the.
Right, this is, what
Yeah,
Hannah was talking about, no, I don't have.
Okay,
Is there
so,
any
so I can give an
material?
overview. I don't think it was added late.
No,
to it.
no, we added it. So it's on
Yeah, I don't, it's not in the online package.
just the item.
Just the
Only
item.
item, okay. So,
Well, because they're going next week, I mean, it's supposed to go next week.
sure, so Madam Chair, it is required in our, per policy, any overnight field trips must be approved by the school committee. And so, you heard Ms. Linehan talk last school committee meeting about they're looking to do an overnight field trip. And we said, that she mentioned that, we said, I think we'd be interested in supporting it, but we needed the paperwork. So the paperwork came to us recently. Of course, last week was the break, so it did make it onto the updated agenda. So we need to know whether or not permission will be granted for the Deca field trip to take place overnight.
And it's 2 nights, correct?
Yes,
In Boston.
in Boston.
At the West End, Does anyone want to make a motion and then we can discuss? Wayne?
I don't want to make a motion.
Oh. Chris?
I'll make a motion to approve the overnight DECA conference field trip.
Discussion?
Marie?
Marie, and then Wayne.
I just have some questions because, we don't know a whole lot. So it's 2 nights, and do the students pay for this themselves? Does the school pay for it? Does the organization pay for it?
I don't
Want
have.
me to go get it?
Yeah,
That help?
I don't have that paper.
Okay. And the transportation for it and all that?
So Hannah could probably answer a bunch of these questions.
I want to say that the school is paying for it because we haven't gotten anything sent to us. So
And there's how many students staying at the West End?
I want to say we have like about 18.
Who submitted the request?
Do you remember from when you went?
So
2 years ago?
I have not seen.
When we
the
went when I was,
paper. Freshman year.
Probably.
so I think we drove back and forth when I was a freshman, and then when I was a sophomore, right before COVID, we stayed over, and that we paid for ourselves. And that, I mean, there's probably only like 8 of us maybe, so.
I just have a follow-up.
Marie?
Sorry, so my last part of that question was after expense and whatnot and transportation. If maybe Dr. B, you could answer. So we do, or we did pre-COVID, I believe there was a band trip at some point, and there was DC trip, and so, if we start giving permission for one, we're gonna get requests for others, so I didn't know where those stood,
Yeah, so this.
or how many.
So Mary Ann said this came in yesterday. I haven't seen permission for any others. I know the DC trip takes an entire year to plan. I think the band is the Disney trip down to Disney.
Like
That
the
also
school year,
Takes a,
school year, like the school year to plan.
yeah, it takes an entire year to plan. So I would anticipate that, yes, with now all of us sitting here without masks, or the option to wear masks, not wear masks, I think that's something that will eventually, the people who had been running those are now going to have to start to think about, okay, is this possible? Like, DC trip is not not that easy. You're talking about all schools. We're trying to figure out what grade levels are going to go now. I know last year when I went to Mr. Parent's, I sat in a couple of Mr. Parent's classes, the students talked about ideas they had since they were going to miss out on it. Maybe they'd be able to go in high school, because they were trying to figure out how to get there. And there's going to be a lot of schools competing for different tour companies. And whether or not those tour companies were able to make it through the pandemic is it's another really big question. So, yeah, I think all those will be forthcoming. If you are an 8th grader this year and you were thinking this is going to be a DC trip, I don't see that happening, because that trip was traditionally in March, I think, is
April.
March, April.
And I believe the sophomores, the current sophomore class missed it as well, right?
That's
The
correct.
juniors
Yeah.
don't want.
Because it was March of that first, 2020.
Right.
So only my first year here did the group go to DC, so I missed the last 2. So, the answer to your question, there are 17 students. There are 2 chaperones. It looks like they're going to have, the PTO is going to pay $5,035.
PTO,
That's what it's listed under.
there's no high school PTO.
Just what it says under here. And then, so the lodging meals are going to be paid by the students and families. The transportation is going to be paid by the high school.
Excuse me.
What it says on the form. It's March 10th through 12th. And it looks to be about $200 per person
For the school?
for the students.
Oh, for the students. And so the PTO is paying for it, but we don't have a PTO?
It's under the PTO, and I'm not sure why that's under
I think that's wrong, because there isn't a high school PTO.
Does anyone have any, Wayne?
Yeah, he answered most of it. I just want to clarify to make sure that the cost of the hotel and the transportation will be $5,035 for the district, total cost.
So the total cost, minus the bus, because they didn't approximate.
Did you say minus the buses?
So it's $8,605.42, plus whatever the cost would be of the bus, is the total cost. Of that, they're approximating each student would have to pay $200. And the total, which is listed under the PTO here, is $5,035. I don't know if that's coming from the high school funds, and there's not a place to put that here, or if it's coming from some other fundraising group.
That's with or without transportation? Are you not clear on that?
I'm not clear on that. It looks like it's without $8,605.42 without transportation. That's what it looks like the cost is.
And you have no idea whether the funding may have been taken care of by this group with fundraising, and it's sitting somewhere to be paid for
That is
without an additional cost to the district?
That is correct.
Maybe I can, the high school has, all schools have a discretionary fund that we created for student activities. From the elementary schools, not having to pay for recorders and highlights, it's more in the middle school and high school. So I have no problem assuming that those funds are there, because I haven't seen a lot of it tapped to pay for the buses part of it. So I don't think you're on much of a hook for the bus part of it. I believe the superintendent just said the parents are willing to pay $200 per child towards it. So what the risk is that $5,000-ish amount. And again, in their discretionary account, it could still be sitting there. Maybe there is some fundraising thing for it, but I don't think you're at any great risk to the district financially if you approve it, if that helps you out at all.
It does.
Chris Redding, then Chris Martins.
And Dick?
And Dick, sorry, I didn't see.
So I'm thinking that if they weren't staying overnight, the school would still be providing transportation back and forth. So to me, that's
Correct.
a wash. So it's the lodging, and if the families are paying probably about $4,000 towards the lodging, the incremental amount isn't that much, is what I'm thinking. But Hannah, you're not sure that parents and families have been told that they're paying that amount yet? Or you don't know?
I mean, we haven't
We haven't been told on, like, paperwork.
Can I ask a process question here?
Absolutely.
So, and again, just for the record, I don't love that this body is responsible for these decisions, but the fact that we are, am I correct in saying that if we are to approve this moving forward, that it would still be pending the district's approval and assessment of the details of the trip, that the kids are going to be adequately monitored, and that the
Yeah.
funding is going to be met?
That is correct. So what's on the sheet, it needs to add up that this is on the sheet is correct. Again, we got this yesterday. So
Right.
this is the first time I'm seeing it, so. but
Yeah,
we
so I
knew-
guess my question is this, obviously, none of us, I don't think, I don't speak for everybody else, wants to certainly get in the way of this happening for the kids, obviously. But I think what we do want to know, again, speaking for myself, but I think it's logical to say, that the district will also be doing due diligence about the details of this project after we've said that we can go ahead and do that. This is still going to be something that's looked at, and if there's anything that's an issue, obviously the district will show discretion.
Correct.
You could make a friendly amendment to the motion that stipulates.
Well, I wanted
that.
to confirm, I guess, that it was
Right,
applied
but
to
you
the
could
motion.
add-
that
no,
we're
I'm
doing-
just saying
yeah,
you could
I'm
add-
fine with the motion as is, but I just wanted to clarify that was the process that was going to be happening.
Okay, Dick?
Does Mayor Wu have a different set of standards regarding mask, unmask, whether you're inside, outside?
I think the mask mandate was lifted in Boston, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, because I know that some mayors and some governors have turned their back on the removal of the mandate, and it's kind of, by golly, you will do this if you're at a restaurant or what have you. I don't know where Mayor Wu stands on this right now. If someone does, I'd love to hear it.
Chris?
I just late today, I think the Boston Health Advisory Board voted to no longer require masks.
All right, outstanding. My other question is, I've taken thousands of kids to DC, but they were 8th graders, not high school kids. So I'm a little curious about the,
Chaperones.
well, we've got 2 chaperones, and most companies, this is not being run by a company, most companies are looking for 1 chaperone per 10 students. That's pretty standard. My question is, we always had the girls on one floor and the boys on another floor, and we always taped the doors. And if anything was untaped in the morning, they had breakfast with me, with possibly being sent home at the parents' expense. So I'm still very concerned about student safety for the same thing where, what was it, a year or 2 ago, we were talking about not sending or sending kids to Germany. And we had some pretty serious conversation about that in terms of student safety and sending them into homes that none of us have ever met. So does anyone want to respond to that? How is the housing taking place if we have them stay overnight 2 nights? And I like the idea of them staying in.
So I can't speak specifically to where the blocks are that they've been allocated for these rooms. I will speak specifically towards Deca conferences. So Deca has its own set of, doesn't matter what the school district has for its policies, Deca has set very clear expectations.
I hear they're pretty stiff.
They are very, very strict. And so there's certain rules about people being outside of the rooms, and if they're in a room they're not supposed to be, being disqualified, being thrown out, all of that's part of it. And that's Deca. And then in addition to that, whatever the school policies are and what they're told to do, what they're not told to do. That's certainly an experience. North Carolina Career and Technical Education is a huge focal point of curriculum down there. So I've been to several of these competitions, and these competitions are big. I don't know if they're huge competitions. And DECA doesn't, for the same concerns you're saying DECA has as well, recognizing that they have a large number of teenagers that are all congregating into one space. So they create some very, very strict programs.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Emily?
I guess I'm very much in favor of them participating in this. I just am very I guess I'm really disappointed that this is so last minute.
Yeah.
And that the
100%.
person who put the paperwork in wouldn't be here to answer questions or something like that, because it clearly, I mean, Hannah talked about this at our last meeting, like, clearly the kids care very much about this, and it is concerning to me that there seemed to be a lack of communication to the students and their families with the details. It doesn't inspire a lot of confidence.
Sure. I agree.
I was gonna say.
So that's like my big hesitation.
Get that work done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Marie?
I just wanted to add that amendment, that if we do pass this, if you get information in the next few days, because we, to Emily's point, no one came to speak to us about this, and we are lacking some significant information, the families are lacking significant information, that you can, whether you approve it or not, you can renege that maybe, or if you didn't feel that it was pending
If it wasn't
superintendent
safe.
approval. Yeah, so pending superintendent's approval,
Okay.
please.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're proposing that the school committee give approval based on additional information that I get, that if I look at it and say, yes, this would be appropriate for a regular field trip, that this would be okay, based on everything you said tonight.
Emily?
And again, I know nobody here is going to have the answer to this question, but I just want to throw it out there. $200 might not seem like a lot for some people, but I would hate for that to be prohibitive, especially at such a last minute, because I know that that is prohibitive for some families. So I would love to, I guess, throw out there that that might be something that the discretionary fund that Greg had talked about, like, that's something I'd be more comfortable seeing that sort of general student fund cover, as opposed to sort of blanket cover all of, the rooms for 18 kids, personally.
Yep, I think we would use the same approach always, not prevent a student from needing funds.
I just know that there are definitely some families who would not be able to come up with $200 by this weekend. And that would really
Disappointed.
be super disappointing, so.
Dick?
I'd like to piggyback off what Emily has said. I know that when we were doing fundraising, I literally went to the businesses in Linfield and North Reading, where I was an administrator. And the businesses, I went to them and said, I have maybe 7, 8 kids. The families are not going to be able to allow their kids to go. Can you help me out? And in every case, that was taken care of. So if we run into that situation, I would like that to be very private, but I'll pay for at least one of the kids.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, I would like to add that, I definitely want to see these kids be able to do this, but this is a bad example of how things should go.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We know that that team is capable of extremely thoughtful, well-done presentations, and that would have been helpful here. Yeah.
And in the future, if people need to do this form, they need to get it in plenty of time and be able to, put all of the answers to the questions in the form.
And as you know, that's typically the way. This made the agenda at the last second.
Well, I think it also has to do with COVID and just the
Sure.
lifting of the masks and being able to
All
travel.
those different parts.
Yes,
But I
exactly.
think we all said, we heard Hannah last time, and at that point, we all said the same thing.
Right.
And we
Get the
communicated
paperwork
out,
to us.
and we still had to get this. No one's in disagreement, and we will investigate further.
Okay, so all in favor? All opposed?
I'm just going to abstain because I
Yeah.
came in halfway through.
Okay.
Good luck.
Motion approved.
Just remember, we're with you, win or tie.
All right, and now we move on to the fiscal '23 budget. We asked Greg to go back and give us some scenarios, different scenarios and different numbers, kind of to try to alleviate the burden on the towns and, without compromising too much, but would you like to
Sure.
have the floor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe each one of you has this little thing you're used to seeing from me to balance our budget that we normally see. This is kind of an easier way to look at what the superintendent sent out yesterday in a Word format that kind of gave you a little background to it. Mr. Adams asked me this morning if I could take, and again, my best guess at how this would affect taxpayers in the towns based upon each scenario. So what you'll see here is 3 different scenarios, and right underneath each one of them is my guess. And I mean, it's a guess because a town can make any number it wants as an override. But based upon if they each put forward 3% over last year, this would be the effect of their override, how much it would affect each taxpayer based on its home value, and how much basically would be a month. So in scenario 1, what you see is our budget book that you saw adjusted for the governor's budget and the opening of the bids for regional transportation aid and special ed and district transportation aid. These hurdle, I mean, the transportation side of it hurt a lot. The governor's cut to transportation and our opening of our bids, plus just the normal health insurance increase, basically eats up more than 2 towns would normally just give us, just like that. So transportation did hurt us a lot. Hearing you, though, going forward, the superintendent and I talked, and along with Mr. Conway, and came up with some ideas after he talked to department heads and chairs and things maybe we can do without, should it be a path we want to go down. And you can see those changes. Basically, what you see is a build-up on it. The first scenario is included in the second scenario, plus some additional things. Not ideal things, but it is. Basically, what it does is takes a little bit of risk and reduces some things that we would like to have. One area is in technology. We would decrease the theater technician and treat it into a high-end stipend position, although no one's been taking it because the stipend obviously is a lot lower than this. Not hiring an additional technology repair technician. Again, a risk with a new building coming in with all the technology in it, leaving us only one for the entire district. And not hiring an additional technology aid, so the middle school, high school will share one, as opposed to one being on each side of the building. Then basically eliminating one team at the high school. Student population is borderline for this, but we have 2 retirements taking place, which we wouldn't do, and the other 2 would be looked at as reductions in English and social studies.
So, just to be clear, when Mr. LeBrecq said reductions, we would hope to be able to use still those individuals and potentially the special education positions if they were willing and wanting.
Sure. We basically, we are doing hiring in other areas, so although they may not be in that slot, further on down, we did have 6 new special ed teachers going into, 3 at Bagnell, 3 at Page, but now we're going to reduce that to 4, but that is 4 new teaching positions. So people with certifications in those areas could move into those slots. But it is a budgetary reduction. And now, obviously, I just mentioned the 2, we're going from 6 to 4 of that. And the elementary first grade teachers at Sweetser and Bagnell, the new ones, we're seeing the kindergarten growth not as robust as it was prior year. So what we're hoping is basically the 4th kindergarten teacher we had at those schools would just become the first grade teacher moving up. So we may not need to hire those 2 positions. Again, calculated risks, but still risks. But again, we needed something to put on the table for you, so we basically did that. And I believe those were the major changes. So it is a reduction in staffing increases and certain things that we would certainly like to have. Following that, of course, is another override calculator. Based upon that, what we think an override would look like if you went with that scenario. The third scenario is a little bit more different. It's basically the first scenario plus the cuts for the second scenario, and now we inject one-time money. I know we've rejected this. I know the towns have suggested it, but it's also what the towns exactly do. They take their free cash and put it into E&D and, I mean, their stabilization funds and things. The same thing our policy tells us to do, that we instituted a while back. So what I'm doing now is injecting, I'm taking 200,000 out of what we were going to put into stabilization. We had an extremely high stabilization, as in most of the towns had extremely high free cash numbers because of COVID. The kids were here every other day. We just didn't spend as much money. Now, it's a one-time injection. We're using it to support real-life budget numbers. So going forward, it's basically you're using a one-time money for things you're going to need in the next year. Just putting that out there, that's what it is. Also, a reduction in special ed transportation by 100,000. The new contract gives us more freedom than we had in the older contract to combine with other districts, shall we say, if we had to team up with ride sharing and things like that. So we're hoping we can realize another 100,000 there. You know, if it doesn't realize, it'll make choices throughout the year, but sometimes things come and things go, so we'll see. And the last one is another $100,003 because I like things to balance. And there was a rounding error, and I was not going to put $3 down the bottom. Of taking another $100,000 out of circuit breaker. We have a good circuit breaker account. We need a good circuit breaker account because of the building going on in the 3 towns and the development going on in the 3 towns and the movement going in and out of the 3 towns. We can randomly and have had randomly people move in that will cost us $350,000 to $500,000 even after our budget's done. So we need to protect ourselves. But I think we're okay if we wanted to take another $100,000 out because, as I said, it's a good fund, and we did get a chance to replenish it last year. So we could look at it. Just by doing those things now, that injects another $400,000 into the system. And would create still an override, because like I said, with transportation and stuff, we weren't going to get around that this year. Just with the teachers, the 4 new union contracts, plus transportation bidding, plus, I mean, you weren't going to get around it. It just wasn't going to happen. But this would reduce your override numbers to about this. And again, when I say about that, towns can do whatever they want with this. I'm just guessing what they did, what they could afford based upon what they've told me in the past, which is the 3%. And this would generate this. Now you can mix and match and do all sorts of fun things with this, or have any other further suggestions of other areas you'd like me to look at. The final thing is, the risk is, and this is a real risk, if we do go for any type of override, if it fails, we have to go and reduce further. And we've already taken from special ed, we've already taken from the middle high school. This would basically put us into paraprofessional and elementary school teaching positions, which would make class sizes something that you do not want to get the emails on. We're talking 30. So that's what I've got for you. I hope I met what you were asking me to do, at least close enough that you can play with it. And of course, we're welcome to hear your comments, thoughts, prayers.
Greg, this is great, and I think you did an awesome job. But one of my questions is, are we just kicking the can? Like, depending on which one we pick, how will that affect next year? Like, if we pick the one with the least effect this year, we're still going to have an override next year to make up for what we didn't get this year?
The short answer is yes, Rob. Well, the question also becomes, we don't know. I mean, if you have, 10 step 12, we had very low retirements this year. If we had a lot of step 12 teachers retire and we replace them with entry-level teachers, it certainly mitigates it. We just don't know those things going forward.
Right.
I'll tell you, the spend isn't really one-time money as an injection. It's more of a thing that could continue on. The stabilization number is money that we just had a lot of this year. Yes, it would kick it in, but again, we still have a stabilization account, so
Right.
it's fine. And this circuit breaker, again, is money you could tap in future years. But at some point, you're right, it is kicking it down the road. The question is, are you going to take it next year, and you'll have a board, you'll have the same question next year. Do you want to keep kicking the ball 10 yards a year, or do you want to kick it 100 yards one year and not kick it anymore the rest of the years? And so it's, I think going forward also, and this is, we've done a lot of work here, all of us, to make sure that we haven't had an override in this district in 10 years. And that we did that, a lot of it, by not following the state approval method when it comes to 2 out of 3 towns. We always made sure that nobody did. So in other words, we were always going to the least common denominator. I think going forward, what you'll be looking at is a town with an override and the other towns not needing them. So you will have an approved budget by them not needing them, but that third town will have to do some work. Two-step does that, as well as building will drive that going forward. And the 2 towns that two-step seems to be favoring have a lot of big construction projects on the thing. So it'll be fun to watch going forward. But any one of these scenarios we can make work. It's more of a question of how you feel going forward and what you think you want to try now.
Okay. Wayne?
I guess I'd like to lower the level of concern for everybody. He did a real good job extrapolating this material. I went with Greg and superintendent and assistant superintendent yesterday with one finance director and one selectman from each town. And all I heard initially there was doomsday. Everything that would scare the death out of the public. And if I heard it from the public and you're using the top number, I'd be scared too, right from we can't pay fire, the police, we're not going to offer the services, our people won't get raises and stuff. So I intervened and then asked for Merrimack, since Merrimack is in the worst boat, and that's where I'm from. I said, well, what would it mean then for the average taxpayer in Merrimack per month? So all taxpayers will have an idea on how much it would be costing them. And Carol told me it's about $380. And mistakenly, we had people there thought that was $380 a month. But it wasn't at all, it was per year. Well, Greg has put this out for us, so Dick didn't mind me using him tonight since he's from Groveland and I'm from Merrimack. He thought his constituency and the population of Groveland would never go for it. It's far too expensive. We're talking $17 million there. They're not going to go through it with everything they've done so far.
That's the town's full tax.
Right, exactly, yeah. And since they are thinking they're paying so much, then look what this is going to do to us. Well, I want to highlight to you what this actually is doing for us. Mr. Hodges just generously agreed to pay for somebody from Deca to go on the trip for $200. Well, for him, it won't be $200 for the entire year. Dick told me what his assessed value of the house was. His monthly thing would be $16 a month and 73 cents. Well, from that, you'd have to subtract what scenario 3 would be, bringing his grand total for the scenario 1, giving us what I believe we need and will be helpful down the road, is $11.25 a month, Mr. Hodges. And I think the homeowner can identify with that, but not the top dollar figure. For me, since Merrimack's a little more expensive, the percentage levy was 4.45, and the tax rate effective was 0.73, it's a little higher. My home, I would have to pay $28.79 more a month. And again, subtracting scenario 3 from scenario 1, my total cost to me, my household, would be $15.60. So the doomsday thing shouldn't be thrown out there for the public to say, well, this is what's going to happen to us for overrides. Override is a very scary word. Some towns go through it all the time. In my 10 years, I don't believe we ever have. At one time, it wasn't for school anyways. So we're going after it, and I think I have a lot of confidence in our administration and the people that run the Pentucket district in that they came up with the best case scenario for the taxpayer initially, and that was scenario 1. And for me, a taxpayer, say, well, this is gonna cost me $15.60, I guess I can do that. I won't have as much Coke as I normally do. I'll just lay off it. Coca-Cola, the beverage. So I just wanted to lower your level of concern, because everybody out here watching this will know what that $11 or $15 would be. And West Newbury is really, I mean, that's really. So I'm hoping our taxpayers, our leaders of the town, our finance directors, and our selectmen would promote this, and I'm guessing it will lead down the road with less risk. So if you've heard the term risk in each scenario, I believe if we go with the first one, that will now be the bar. There's probably going to be less risk with that. So if you don't know by now, yes, I want scenario 1 for sure.
Which is the initial.
The initial.
That they brought to us. Marie and then Dick?
Well, I think Dick was first.
Okay, Dick.
I listened to some of the selectmen meeting last night, and it was not good news from their point of view. And I don't believe they have one single piece of information that you just shared. So it was absolute doomsday. I mean, I almost was ready to sell my house last night, but I had no place to go, so I decided to stay. From the doomsday standpoint, I had said to Wayne before the meeting started, I said, I can't find anyone in Groveland that wants to pay over $700,000. But $700,000 at the value of my house is around $16 tops per month. I can afford that. There are other people in town on a fixed income. I'm not so sure they can afford that. So I have to be sensitive to that. I'm representing the taxpayers, not Dick Hodges. I'm representing the taxpayers. So when I came in tonight, I actually was thinking of just going for option 3. I said that to 2 or 3 people. Because I think with a lower number, that's something that no one's going to be happy with an override. I've never been to a town meeting, and I've only missed one in decades. I've never been to a town meeting where there was great joy over any override, be it great, middle, or low. But I'm going to need to sit and probably listen to, for a few more minutes before I finally make a decision as to whether Wayne was actually able to change my mind.
Okay. Marie, then Chris, ready?
So I met with Greg last week just to get personal questions about the budget answered, and he was great, and I appreciate that. And then I met at the same meeting as Wayne with the select board members, and I've read the emails and I've seen the concerns, and I understand that, but seeing it laid out this way, and to Dick's point, like, I mean, I'm a taxpayer as well, like we all are, that's why we're here, and I have 3 kids coming up on college, and I think of that too, but I also think about, in my time here, like, I remember when we were pushing for the new school building, we got a lot of, well, did you take care of the other school buildings? How are you gonna take care of this building? And that's built into this budget. And I have heard a lot of complaints about how our language department has shrunk at the high school level and how it's not offered at the 7th grade level universally. And we get, we had a number of parents emailing us and showing up in support of the teachers during our time of negotiation. And I think we need to take that into consideration, that people have been voicing their concerns and they have been telling us what they want for this district. Oversized classrooms, I can remember when my youngest was in kindergarten and they stuffed them and we all came and we fought so hard and they said, nope, there's just no budget, you're not getting that teacher. And I see Dr. Jarvis here and maybe he could answer some of the questions on special ed and whatnot, but it deeply concerns me because I think several times we have been in that situation, as Greg said, that we have passed a budget and then incurred a great cost. That's concerning to me because if that great cost comes on, what does it do? Does it take away from another class? Does it take, like, where do we get that money? I know Greg's very good at budgeting and he always finds a way, but to Dr. B's point, we haven't had an override in how many years? And while I don't like to put the pressure on the taxpayers, I think when you see it written out this way, which I appreciate you doing that, and everything you're gonna get for it, and everything that parents have come to us students have come to us. I'm for number one.
So I think, if I may, Madam Chair,
Yep.
Dr. Jarvis is here, and I know this special education, Greg alluded to this, it is, every year it's a gamble. It is an ebb and a flow, because sometimes students come in, and we are going to provide those students, like we will any of our students, the services that they need in order to be successful in school. And so, Dr. Jarvis, do you want to talk about just so far, like this year, or even in the last couple months, what that's looked like for Pentucket?
Well, and could I piggyback on that as well, and the effects that COVID will eventually have on this sped budget as well? Because
Oh,
I
I'm
think,
sorry, you're right,
So I
compensatory
think it's pretty
service.
well known. I think it's pretty well known in the way of social, emotional issues that have come up, in the way of fallout from the pandemic. And that's certainly taken hold with our services, our inclusion services, our services that support inclusion services, our district programs, and then even advancement to our district placements. Those numbers have increased. I'd say, so we have a number of kids that unprecedented, that are on the verge of an out-of-district placement because of their level of need regarding mental health or significant need.
So when you say out of district, what does that mean in terms of expense, approximately?
So a living placement for an out-of-district sort of collaborative would average around $65,000, somewhere around there. Per student, not including transportation. That's a collaborative, that's supposed to be
Cheapest.
a public
The discount.
option
Just a
for
discount.
our students, and it's at that price tag. And so you start getting into the private end, you're looking at six figures, not including transportation, not including summer program. So it's a big expense, and a lot of this is related to some pandemic fallout regarding social and emotional, regulatory kinds of issues. They're manifested now on a larger scale than they did last year.
Thank you.
Chris, did you want to?
Yeah, so I'm taking kind of a different tack. The change from scenario 1 to 2, to me, represents people who are facing children, people who are teaching children, people who are supporting children. And I have a really hard time making those cuts, because I feel that, like Wayne or somebody said, the administration came up with our budget because it is, right now, what we truly need to best educate our students. Now, some of the changes from 2 to 3 are Greg's work, of things that he can maneuver enough and he thinks there can be some movement, and I completely agree with our E&D. If it's a one-time bigger amount because of COVID, because we didn't run bus runs, because we had half the number of games that you normally would have, so there's a whole number of reasons why it's bigger. Using some of that money, to me, makes sense, and not putting it into stabilization. And then the circuit breaker is the same thing. So to me, I'd much rather take that approach and do that 400,000 by taking some of our, savings accounts and using them for this one time. I think going forward, that gives us a more manageable number to not have such a big gap for next year in our operating expenses. It's a little bit better. So like I kind of almost like, you know what I'm talking
You want
about,
to
right?
switch 3 and 2. You want to
Line
leave
number
2.
two.
but-
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, so essentially take one and take out your estimate changes that you felt we can handle within the budget.
Just throw 400,000 of new revenue into the system without the staff
Yes.
reductions.
Which is not a scenario you did, but,
No, it's not. I mean, like I said, I told you, mix and match,
Right.
that's fine, you did.
yeah. So to me, I think that's the least impact on the students, on our programs, on our educational ability. But still realizing that we owe it to the towns to try to minimize the impact to them.
Wayne and then Dr. B?
Just a quick one, I just want to reinforce the Dick, it isn't going to be 16, Dick. You have to subtract scenario 3 from it, so it'd only be $11.25. Okay, your scenario 1 is 16 something, scenario 3, you have to subtract really dollars, you're only paying $11.25 an hour.
So you don't subtract it. Each scenario has, this is the number for each of those scenarios.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying
Yeah.
I'm subtracting it, Greg, because if we're gonna go with 1, 2, or 3, each one has a dollar amount.
Yep.
Well, if the first one is $16 and the third one was $5,
Oh, I see.
you're not paying the 16, you're really only paying $11 difference. So I wanted Dick to realize it isn't 16, it's $11.25 for the people of Groveland with an average.
Dick? Oh,
I think
sorry.
Dr. B was
I'm
next.
sorry, Dr. B, then Joanna, then Dick.
I'll go last.
You'll go last, all right.
Okay.
Dick or Joanna?
All right, so my main concern is that we would pass a budget that would then fail in two of the towns and we go to a 112 budget. So this is what I want to avoid. And as Greg has said, this is the override that Greg's predicting, but it's not what the towns have to do. So if the towns don't like a budget, of course, they can make the override, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, they can make it even bigger.
Yep.
So that it would look even worse.
So it doesn't pass.
So that it won't pass. Like Groveland and Merrimack could vote to do that if they wanted to. So like I think we have to have some good faith effort to reduce from version 1 so that the towns don't do that and force the schools to a 112 budget. So we did get a lot of emails from parents when the teacher's contract was up, because everybody was under the impression that there were no raises, and so we were getting all of these very angry emails in support of the teachers. Now, that same type of effort is going to have to occur and be targeted, I think, towards the town government to say, this is how we want our resources allocated at this point going forward. So I think that it is worth trying to kick the can a little bit down the road so that if this is what the taxpayers want, if they truly want resources allocated more towards the schools than they've been in the past, they have a chance to voice their opinion on that. But it's not something that's probably going to happen in a month. So that's just my opinion. If I said anything incorrect, let me
No,
know.
actually, you went down, and to hearken as to what Mr. Hodges and Mr. Adams said, heard about the gloom and doom. I don't think their gloom and doom cycle, as I understand it, isn't because it's $15 a house or $20 a house. Their gloom and doom cycle is they're the town, the reverse of what Joanna just said. They're the one town that doesn't pass it. And they have to cut $700,000 from their municipal budget, which is non-school, only about $5 million. That's where their panic comes from. It's not, I don't think it's that. It's not that we're asking for an override, it's they'll be the town that doesn't pass it. That's where their panic comes from. The same reason Joanna alluded to. A little bit of our panic would be if they turned the tables and two of them didn't pass it, we end up with a 112 budget. We have to redo another budget and send it to them with the cuts we'd make or the cuts we'd make if they didn't do a new budget. So, yeah, there's a balance in all of this, no doubt about it.
I have Dick.
Yeah, I think probably most of the taxpayers in all three towns do not know what we know, and certainly do not know what has been shared with Greg and Wayne tonight. We apparently, Pentucket is the lighthouse for special ed. People have figured out, send your special ed kid here and we will take care of you.
We do that with all our kids now, Dick.
No, but I'm just saying that from an outside view, we have become the lighthouse for that, and the word is out. And they will come in and they will expect all kinds of things. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on students, and I'm not saying we should not have, but I'm saying the realism that people don't understand as far as the taxpayers. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on students that will never see a schoolroom ever, K through 12. I believe we have upwards of over, if my conversation, I met with Greg today, we have over $3 million worth of outside placements. That's huge. Think what we could do with that money. And I'm not saying that we ought not to be spending that. I'm saying that's the realism that when you go to a town meeting, outside of the school committee members and anybody that's involved with the finance committees, nobody knows that. They just look at that gloom figure that we were talking about, and the information that you shared, I don't know how we get that out. I mean, I'm somewhat comforted but I'm also a person that can afford that. I live in a town where I know that people on fixed incomes cannot afford that. They're now choosing, do I get my medicine for this week, or do I buy groceries? That's a big deal for some. Not all, but we definitely have become the lighthouse for special ed, and I guess I give us credit for having good hearts, great hearts, to reach out to people to meet their needs, but there's a huge cost that most taxpayers have no idea what we're talking about.
Thanks, Dick. Chris?
So it does strike me, looking at scenario 3, this is not my area of expertise, you tell me, but I see the phrases hope, I see the phrase gamble, I see the second bullet talking about automatically being short $200,000 for the budget year. These don't sound like terms we associate with sound budgeting practices.
No, they're not.
Okay. I mean, that immediately to me starts to, it paints a little bit of a picture about what we're talking about, or where we started. So I would just say that I'm really glad that I believe Groveland TV is here tonight. I really wish they had been at the budget hearing a couple of weeks ago. I would encourage everybody to go back, find that on the web, take a look at that presentation, take a look at the presentation that the superintendent gave, provided some historical budget context about where we are compared to our neighbors, compared to districts that are like us, compared to districts that we share a conference with. One of the things I love about a regional district is the different natures of the towns, right? And the different natures of the people in those towns, and how proud people tend to be about the community that they're from. Sometimes competitively so. I really like it. I enjoy that aspect of it. I did not feel pride looking at that presentation about where Pentucket is and where we've been for a while as a school district. Tell me that you look at those numbers and you feel pride about being from Groveland or from Merrimack or from West Newbury. And we are pretty much last in terms of what we commit to our kids by almost any metric. And that problem isn't going away. And that problem does not get made up by this budget, right? That's one of the things I know I think it was somebody from Groveland was here, and they pointed out they love to outspend everybody. We're not talking about outspending anybody. We're talking about trying to close a fairly shameful gap. And this is a step towards that. And I don't think it's going to be easy, and I think the conversation over the next month will be extremely hard. But clearly, there's no avoiding that we're going to have that conversation. We're going to have it publicly. And I hope everybody can do it in a good faith way.
And I also wanted to just mention to the public that this, what we're looking at will be posted as well, and you'll be able to see everything online, so.
Yep, and that will be, if you go onto the Pentucket's website, so the documents that, there's one document out there right now, which is kind of the verbal explanation, and then there is the document of the breakdown of all the scenarios, and along with the cost, of what the cost will be monthly. And again, these are all estimates. These are all complete estimates, and these will be up. So if you go to the Pentucket website, click on school committee, and then budget documents, it will be located there. I know Ms. Page, Greg will get his document, and we'll post that up with the kind of my version of the narrative that explains kind of what's happening. But the version with the numbers does go through. If that was the number, this is what the cost. And that's an if. Like, again, towns can do whatever they would like to do, but yes, these documents will be up on the website, as are all the presentations. And I think just a few pieces of information. One, I know, one of the boards of selectmen, they met, I shared the presentation that I did for all of you. It was a public presentation, that's up there. And that was at the beginning of this budget. And numbers change, things adjust. March 4th, we have the insurance numbers come in, and we'll find out, is that going to be beneficial or is that going to be hurtful to these numbers? Because the budget still changes. I mentioned, and I'll ask Greg this question because we've heard this, that we're so late in the budget cycle trying to get this done. And is that, I'm only in my 4th year, and to me, we've done the same thing each year. It's just we've started earlier in terms of the education process. So I'm going to ask you, you've been here for, I think, 10 to 12 years. Like, are we late in getting this information to the towns?
Absolutely not. Matter of fact, when I heard that one, I went and pulled the 2013 public hearing date. It was 4 days earlier than the one we had tonight. We are normally scheduled. The only difference between that time and now is this is the first time we're looking at an override. That's the only thing that's changed. The timing is still the same, and it's always the same. The problem we've got, and I'm sorry, Kristen, two towns, Groveland and Merrimack, because of printing ballots and things like that for an override, they need their assessment number by the 14th of March. Chris said, no, things we'll talk about over the next month. We don't have a month.
Sorry, I'm in the public.
Yeah, but, for approval. And to approve a budget, we have to have 2 members from each town. So if we don't do anything tonight, and I'm willing to run back to my office and throw Chris's scenario together in like 10 minutes, that's no problem. But if you don't, before next Thursday, before the close of business next Thursday, you will have to have another meeting that at least 2 of you can, each town, have to be there.
Before close of business next Thursday?
Because they need me to send their letters to them on Friday, hand deliver them on Friday, their assessment letters.
But we could vote Thursday night.
You could vote Thursday night and do it. But
I didn't
again,
know
you
you
can,
could vote.
again, it's fine with me. I'm going away for a few days, but I will be back by I wouldn't be back next Tuesday, but I would be back next Thursday. And I'd be happy to throw whatever I could together, but you'd have to commit, we need 2 people here from every town for next Thursday. If you want to do it past tonight. And like I said, I can run through another scenario you guys want. This is all computerized. I can just run back to my office and crank it right out. But if you want me to do a few more scenarios or take your input tonight and throw it around a little bit, you're going to have to, you really need to commit to a meeting a week from this Thursday. And I need 2 people from each town to be there.
So while they're pondering that, Greg, if I could ask you a couple other questions.
Sure.
I heard Mr. Hodges say there's out-of-district placements, more than $3 million. And I'm just looking over at Dr. Jarvis and you, because I believe that out-of-district placement over $3 million is just for 7 students. We have more than 7 students. Just those 7 students cost us more than $3 million. And that's we are following what we're supposed to per federal and state.
That's without question.
Right.
I was not-
I know you want to complain. I was just
Okay.
pointing out because I think it's important for people to understand that when you $3 million is a huge number, but that's the expense to us, and we do get money back in circuit breaker from that. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, we offset it with circuit breaker like we talked about
That's
tonight, but
correct.
in actual dollars, it's more like 12.7.
So when people ask, well, why don't you spend your state, why don't you spend your circuit? And that's why, because when when a student comes in, that's our responsibility. It's our community's responsibility to educate all children, not the ones we want, the ones it's all children. And if a student costs $300,000, then that student costs $300,000. And we do not have the ability, we're not a municipality, where we can put a hold off a project. We're a school district that has an annual budget. Mr. LeBrecq, another question.
Yes,
Now, you've been the business manager at Pentucket for how many years?
since 2013.
What did you do prior to that?
I was the finance director for the town of Groveland.
So as a finance director for the town of Groveland, would you say that you have a pretty strong understanding of how town businesses work, how their budgets work?
Sure.
So when you put these numbers together, you have a pretty good idea of that these are right on par with what would be done in a town. Because I've also heard that we may not know what we're doing with the budget. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that we might have a good idea of what we're talking about.
I would tell you that in fairness, the same way you're doing it, what they will do is they'll say, okay, you were 60% of our budget, we'll give you 60% of our new money, and anything above that's an override. Or some sort of consistent formula. To do anything less than that is, in my mind, would just be vindictive. We're not doing this to try to hurt anybody. We're doing it the same way a police department or a fire department or anybody else advocates for their department.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're required as a school committee, that's what we are all required to do. Another thing I would just point out, and I know this has been said, I wanted to reiterate this point. We definitively brought to you budgets, and we went through, made adjustments, and it was a lot of work, but it's not a woe is me, it's the work we have to do. The time frame in which we're required to do it. Governor's budget comes out, and that triggers the numbers. That date this year was January 26th. That budget book that gets posted, that budget book is already, a lot of that's already written. So as soon as the governor's budget comes, that's when we start having the ability to look at the numbers, make the adjustments, put in what we think's needed. And from there, our next meeting, we had a meeting February 15th, right? We had a meeting on it. So you're seeing this stuff for the first time. So the thought that we could get together in October and have this conversation is just not a realistic conversation. There's not a conversation to be had. We, last year, were under the belief that all 3 towns would end up in override because we thought, that in addition to everything else, the cost of ESSER, like us giving them the ESSER, that to help them offset some of what they were obligated to pay, that would be already a cost against them, and that didn't happen. They actually had to eat that cost, but even there, Greg was able to work with the towns to make sure that didn't trigger overrides last year. So,
And we never got a budget really assessment nailed down till August.
that's right, because they did that later on.
Because they yanked our chain in July.
And so it is worth repeating. If we go with the original, that number is big. And if people focus on the number, it's going to be scary. If they focus on what's in here, the estimated monthly cost, it's a different story. But it will be catastrophic to a town that does not pass an override. If the other 2 do pass, it will be catastrophic. And there is no way to sugarcoat that, right? That is a real statement. So it's not just incumbent upon us to go ahead and say, this is what we want. It's also incumbent upon us to make sure that the public in your respective towns, certainly my job as well as you, understands this is the impact of what is happening. If you don't choose to approve an override, this is what would potentially happen if 2 other towns do. And it's not a scare tactic, it's a reality. That is the reality of what will happen. And even in those scenarios, if 2 did pass and 1 did not, there is an opportunity to come back and try to figure that out. But at those numbers, there's not a lot that can be figured out. So I would just put that out there. So when we have a town being protective of its citizens, we are all protective of our town citizens. We understand our fiduciary responsibilities. But it's also a situation where if you are convincing people no, and the other 2 towns say yes, you have put your own town in a much worse position than what if they had all voted yes. And I'm not saying people should blindly vote yes. You need to vote with what you think you can afford, and if this makes sense to you, then you vote. But it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure our respective populations and the community population understands what is at stake.
Dick?
Kind of curious, I'm curious about Chris Redding's idea. I'd like to see that in print, written as well as numerical. And I'm wondering, and I'm not trying to add meetings for everyone, I'm wondering if we took a look at that and anything else Greg had or any other ideas, whether I'll commit to Thursday night if that's necessary for that to happen, and therefore not vote tonight. Other people may disagree. They may want to vote right now. I think my partner over here in crime would probably like to vote right now. But I guess I'm going to be flexible enough to say that I'm willing to, if we don't vote tonight, I'd like to see Chris's. I was very interested in what she said, but I don't fully understand what she said.
Sure.
And I'd like to really...
That sounds intriguing.
Well, I'd like to study it.
Yeah, no, I know, that's fine.
Does someone want to make a motion?
Well, I think you kind of need to figure out, can everybody,
Do we have a form?
kind of like do a poll, can anybody make it next Thursday before you schedule a meeting?
Oh, Marianne?
So next Thursday, we would have 2 from each town. which is what's required. One town, we would have 3. So we could have a meeting next Thursday if that's what the committee wants to do. That's the only night that's really available.
Okay. Chris?
The other thing is the insurance numbers will be in by then, which hopefully is a non-impact, but could be one way or the other, so
Yeah,
that
hopefully
would
they're
crystallize.
They're scheduled to vote on the 3rd. Last year, they were scheduled to vote on a thing, and then they never made a decision and kicked the can down the road another month. So, but that's, right now, that's their schedule. Their rate hearing is scheduled for the 3rd.
And this would be posted in time for everyone to see and to.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, Ms. Page is here, so when we're talking about special education, I asked Ms. Page and Dr. Jarvis to be here, just because a lot of the budget impacts, they respect technology and special education, so questions came up. So your question, since Ms. Page is here, yes, she has already the verbal. I don't have a companion for this, what Chris just said, but I understand how we can make that happen. And then Greg's, she does not have yet, but Greg would be able to put that in a format, share with her, and we'd be able to put those both out together.
Now, do you want me to send this out, scan it and send it over to Ms. Page as is, or do you want me to also throw Chris Redding's scenario into it as well, so that gets up there? Because I really can't add it. After tomorrow, like I said, I'm gone until I come back the following week.
Why don't you?
So I can create, Chris, I'll create that scenario and send it out, and then put all 4 scenarios out there.
And you'd be able to get, as long as you can email it to Ms. Page by tomorrow.
I'll do it first thing tomorrow morning, and, I mean, really, it's not gonna take me 10 minutes, and then I'll just scan everything and send it off to her.
Okay. And for the people who are looking for these documents, I would just, on the one that has all the numbers, the one that has the numbers on it, it's a spreadsheet without the lines. The first page goes over what each town's expense would be, what their assessment would be above what was already budgeted. And the second page of each version, so version 1, the second page shows, and again, these are guesstimates. It depends on what number was put on by the town, but it shows the home value, what the annual cost would be, and what your monthly cost would be for, if that were the override number that would go through. That is, not again, it's an approximation, but I think it helps put things in perspective, so.
It may not be exact, but it is more than very, very, very close.
Okay. And so there's 3 different scenarios, and tomorrow there'll be 4.
So do we need to make a motion to table this vote until next Thursday, or?
No, we
because
don't have to vote.
I don't think we ever made a motion
Okay.
to begin with.
You have to
Yeah,
vote
well,
to
just
schedule
because
another
it
meeting, though,
says-
that's not on the calendar.
Okay, because it's
Excuse me?
You have to vote to schedule another meeting, because it's not on the calendar.
No, I just have to post it, and everybody knows about it, so
so
I
it's,
know who can come and who can't, so everything's okay.
all right, so we don't need to, because it says
So
discuss
you were
approve.
coming, you have to come.
Right, because
You have to
you don't
really get
have
on
to
a gurney,
approve it,
just
but
you
if
can
it
do
said
this.
discuss only,
You
you
have
have to amend the agenda.
Okay. Okay, so, yes?
Can I just ask Ms. Page, like where, if I was a parent and I wanted to see what exactly would be cut, or if I was a taxpayer and I wanted to see, you know, if it was gonna cost this much in this version, this is what I would get for it versus which I wouldn't, where would I go on the website to find all that? What's gonna be posted?
All of these documents that we're talking about.
Yeah,
So you go to just the district site, school committee,
school committee.
and then budget documents.
Great, thank you. So school committee budget documents.
School
Thank
committee,
you.
budget documents, and they're all there. And Ms. Page, is there one in particular we want to call this? We'll call this,
I let her call it whatever she wants to call it, I just say,
But
here's
just-
the dump
I'll
sketch.
probably drop over tomorrow.
Do you want to tweet it?
sure, we'll put it out on,
Budget amendments.
we'll put it out on Twitter sphere.
There you go,
and we'll
budget
send a
amendments.
message.
That works.
You can name the other one after me.
Chris Redding budget amendment and the other 3?
No, that's okay.
So we don't need a motion?
No?
Okay.
Is that meeting going to be at 6 Thursday?
Yes.
Is it easier for people to do earlier?
Not to take.
Okay, just asking.
Okay. So,
So the next Thursday at 6 PM
yes, here,
here.
yeah, we'll take care of it.
Great. Anyone else have anything else to add?
Move adjournment.
All in favor? Great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate all the work.
These are,